Hello and welcome to another episode of The Swing. As always, it's your boy HK, and I'm joined by my co-host, that guy Owais, as we get to break down the early results of what we've been seeing in what has been an absolutely intense playoff battle. Much as we had expected coming into this entire postseason, the way the seedings had been set up, the way the matches had been set up, we expected there to be fireworks. We expected there to be back and forth battles. But much as we've talked about in the playoffs before, it's all about adjusting, it's all about executing, and it's all about taking the haymakers that the opponent throws at you and coming back stronger. In the case of some series, we may potentially be seeing knockout punches being thrown already. And in some other ones, we may be seeing just the rise of a phoenix from the ashes, where we get to go ahead and see potential upsets, potential changes to what other people's brackets had been. And by the way, just as a reminder, for those who hadn't signed up yet, I'll post the link once again because the brackets still have one more day to allow you guys to get in, sign up, join the Swing Podcast's NBA Playoff Bracket Challenge. Again, the opportunities are there for you to go up against not only HK's, not only that guy Oasis, but a number of other Swing Podcast listeners who've put in their brackets, who've put in their choices of who they think is going to go all the way, how many games each series is going to take. And apart from the fact that the NBA itself is offering a big potential $1 million prize for the perfect bracket, but just within the Swing Podcast itself, the guy or gal who's able to go ahead and get the best bracket in the Swing Podcast NBA Bracket Challenge will win a $25 Amazon gift card for a gift of their choice to go ahead and celebrate showing off their NBA playoff bracket knowledge. As always, though, the Swing Podcast is proudly sponsored by Thrive Fantasy. And for those who haven't signed up yet, why not? Go to thrivefantasy.com, sign up using the promo code SWING, SWING, in which for doing so, not only do you get an opportunity to join on the daily fantasy props tournaments that Thrive Fantasy hosts on a daily basis, but as a bonus for using that promo code SWING, you will get 100% of your deposit matched up to the first $50 that you go ahead and deposit on it. So definitely sign up, make your picks, and win money with the Swing. Sign up and prop up today. That guy, Owais, I know you're here with me. I know you have been excited to see a number of these playoff matchups. And so far, in the 3 days that we've gotten of playoff games thus far, we have seen 5 series that have gone ahead and played 2 of their games. As we spoke about, first games are often that feel-out game, really trying to see what the opposition's throwing at you. So in many ways, that's kind of like that initial game where you don't know where things are happening. So sometimes odd things happen there, upsets happen. And you know what? Oftentimes a team can go ahead and rebound from that and look to execute. But out of these 5 series that we have seen so far go into 2 games, and I'll go through which those are. So far, Brooklyn and Boston, where Brooklyn is now leading 2-0. Milwaukee, Miami, also a 2-0 lead for Milwaukee. But on the other hand, we have the Phoenix Suns and the LA Lakers, who came off with that insane Game 1 victory as far as the Phoenix Suns are concerned. The Lakers came back to tie it 1-1. Same story for the Denver Nuggets and the Portland Trailblazers. But finally, and probably the most surprising / intense / crazy series thus far has been the Dallas Mavericks going up against the LA Clippers, where as of last night, Luka Doncic and his Dallas Mavericks have taken a 2-0 series lead, playing both their games at the Staples Center. So 2 away wins. That guy, Owais, I know we have a number of these to go through. I know you've done some great work to put a couple of highlights together, but I'll get those up here. And why don't you talk to me initially about this Brooklyn and Boston matchup? Is this just an absolute mismatch?
It's a great question to ask. Going into it, I had pretty high praise for a team like Boston because, despite their struggles this season, I said they're well coached. They have the right fit with a lot of our Players Faraz, what's going on, man? Nice to see that you've tuned into the podcast. But yeah, I mean, I personally felt like this would be a much deeper series than what we're seeing right now. Like, it's just pure domination. The first game, it seemed as if like Boston had some sort of a hold on Brooklyn, but then came the fourth quarter, right? And then come, the superstar talent that, Brooklyn Nets possess with, the likes of Kevin Durant, James Harden, Kyrie Irving, and, guys that fill in the roles like Joe Harris. And, it's just, if anything, I think the difference maker apart from the superstars in this series has been Joe Harris and just how really smooth he's been playing on both ends of the court. By
the way, side note, Robert Williams set a franchise record of 8 blocks in that first game. Yeah. By the way, all respect to Bill Russell. They obviously didn't count blocks back in that day. I'm sure he had games of greater than that, but 8 blocks, just absolutely nasty.
Crazy. And you know what? He's giving them difficulty on the inside, like on the defensive end, in the paint. We know that, but also on the offensive end, like he's doing some dirty work here on trying to get like those offensive boards going, and he's fighting for those rebounds. But it's to what? You know what I mean? Like Boston's literally getting slapped. The first game, they made it seem like it might be a closer series than most would have thought. Until that, and then like the second game too, and it was just embarrassing. But you never know. You really miss a guy like Jaylen Brown. I don't know what you think about this series, but it seems like it's pretty much a sweep going forward.
I mean, I am totally happy to go ahead and call that, because if the listeners recall, that guy always called this to be a 6, if not 7 game series, which is to me absolutely insane. I call this a sweep because the Boston Celtics are being torn apart, much like James Harden's jersey was in game 1, right underneath the right side over there. But it's all just symbolism, because this has been just an absolute demolition job. And frankly, I expected it. Apart from the fact that Jaylen Brown is not there, so yes, that takes away one defensive presence and also a secondary offensive presence on there. But more so than that, it's just how well the Boston role players have not done. Yeah, that by the way, when I saw that live,
scary. That was scary. Oh my God,
hopefully he's all right. Yeah, he fell pretty badly on his arm there. But unlike a certain other player that stayed down for minutes on end.
Let's not talk about that. We'll get to it eventually. That's part of it.
But yeah, he got right back up. He bounced back, and just like Brooklyn themselves, who definitely had an underwhelming first half of game 1, but since then have not looked back. No. They just got ahead, turned on the Jets. Kevin Durant, I believe, dropped 15 points in that third quarter. James Harden also had 2 back-to-back threes, and I think 10 points in that quarter as well. And just from there, it's been all what we had expected. And it's almost disrespectful that Steve Nash in his post-game was just like, look, in many ways, this is kind of our breeding ground of how we're getting things going. Usually you'd see something like that being said, in the preseason, early regular season, but they are using the playoffs to fine-tune the stuff that they're looking to make sure is greased up and ready to go once this goes deeper into the postseason. Because look, the way Brooklyn is fanning out, and we have other playoff series to go ahead and talk about, but they are likely going to be going up against the Milwaukee Bucks in the next one, potentially the Philadelphia 76ers in the series after that. And those are going to be 2 challenging series in that they are going to present great defensive tenacity on that end. And they're just going to have so much more to offer in terms of the kind of looks they can throw at you, the kind of physicality they can throw at you, that it's really important for the support guys to really find their bearings, find their way. Joe Harris has obviously been absolutely incredible for the Brooklyn Nets throughout this year, league-leading 3-point percentage guy, and just absolutely went off to start off game 2. So it was just one of those things where it's like, look, we kind of expect this to happen, and it also doesn't help now that Jason Tatum, who got poked in his eye game 2, only could play 21 minutes, was not able to return. Status is questionable for his game back in Boston. And really, at this point, the only interesting part of this series left to me is what the Boston fans are going to do to Kyrie Irving when he shows up there for game 3 after leaving in the most unhappy of circumstances you can think of. So much bad blood being set up there. He's pretty much enemy number one in Boston after doing everything in his power to make it seem like I'm here forever. I want to see my jersey retired. I want to be everything that the Celtics franchise wants me to be. And then he just decides, all right, I'm peacing out. And it just became such a toxic relationship at the end where not only were tons and tons of picks given away from the Boston side to be able to acquire Kyrie, which has now got to nothing, but then on top of that, the fans, the way the backlash has happened from when he's left, it was straight up like, don't let the door hit you on the way out. So as much as Kyrie, I'm sure, would love to focus on just basketball, you can expect it to be quite spicy once that Game 3 and Game 4 happen.
Hey, man, look, he did the Raptors a big favor, man. Disrespected the team that disrespects pretty much everybody in the league. Screw Boston. Boston fans, they are the worst, and I do not care how Kyrie did it. And I'm glad he did it to that franchise because who cares about that franchise? Not me. I'll tell you that much. So, brother Kyrie,
all the Boston fans out there.
Nah, I'm just kidding. But honestly, like the thing about the Tatum being missing, that in itself is really, really tough because he was quite literally, he's the only guy who can go off on that team. He's been carrying them since the Jaylen Brown injury. And it seems like people, not to discredit the rest of the guys, like I felt like Marcus Smart had a fantastic game 1. And he was hitting pretty efficiently from three-point land too, which was kind of reminiscent of like the Raptors series they had last year. But I mean, it just comes down to firepower. Like Brooklyn just has too much. At this point, it's like it's not even like defense is going to win you. It's like who's going to score more. And that's kind of the bully basketball Brooklyn's going to be playing this entire playoffs. And so that's the exciting thing from a hooping perspective. Like if you guys think about cheat codes in video games, this is it. This is the pinnacle of that. So it's exciting to watch, man. They can hit it from 3. You see Kyrie doing these insane like fadeaways or layups that just look so flashy. And then, KD takes over the game. James Harden takes over the game. And it's just too difficult of a task for a team like Boston. And, when you have a guy like Blake Griffin doing poster dunks after not being able to dunk, pulling off a VC, being like, I don't know how to dunk. I can't dunk anymore. My legs are shot. My knees are shot. And then you have him actually go ahead and dunk, especially in poster form. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a wrap right there, okay? It is a wrap.
It's a whole damn shawarma.
It's a whole damn shawarma, sage shawarma. Shout outs to Osmos, okay? Now listen to me, folks. Boston fans, there's a lot that you can look forward to regardless. Just because, remember, you're a well-coached team and you have Jaylen Brown, who isn't playing in this series, but next year you're expecting that guy to be healthy and even better than last year. Hopefully they get rid of Kemba, and that's all I got to say about that because he's just not been a good fit for this team. And you can build around those two guys. Who knows? You could pick up a more, I guess, a point guard. Like I think a Drew Holiday would have been a perfect fit for a team like this as well, right? Because I just feel like he's a much better facilitator than someone like Kemba, even Kyle Lowry, honestly. But not that I would ever want to see him go there. Anyway, besides the point, this is a wrap. Fans, whoever's watching, let us know what you think. Do you guys think it's a sweep, or do you think Boston somehow miraculously takes 1 or 2? Because they're definitely not taking the series. And that's what we got to say about that. And that is the Brooklyn series, if you will. Today, I think I haven't heard any news on Tatum though, and his eye injury.
Yeah, it's still a questionable thing. I don't expect him to potentially miss out on the game. He's probably going to be there. One, because who knows? You get to go home on there. They're going to have a full house, and that's, by the way, been probably the most exciting thing for me in these playoffs. Really getting to see those fans back, starting to see the chants come back, starting to see that aggression, all of that makes the playoffs what they are. It's coming back. So, I could even potentially see Boston, just riding the wave of the fans to one game of this, maybe to stretch it to a 5-game series. But yeah, it's tough. It's tough to be able to see it. And as far as this series is done, I would say that's about that. So what we want to do now is go ahead and take some time and move on to speaking about the other team in the East that have gone ahead and played their 2 games on here, Milwaukee and the Miami Heat. And honestly, I think to me this series was a bit of a false promise. Last year was just absolutely disgusting the way that Milwaukee just capitulated in that series against the Miami Heat. Didn't
shot themselves in the foot.
Shot the combination of shooting themselves in the foot, Miami playing at their absolute peak, and the coaching, the rotations just not making sense. Giannis also got injured at that point, but the series was pretty much done then anyways. But a lot had been put on Mike Budenholzer, and think about it. Giannis, in 2 of those games, played 34 minutes. 34 minutes in a playoff game where you needed the W. It made 0 sense. And he had near triple-doubles in both those games. He was killing it. But the way that Mike Budenholzer has always kind of set it up has been, team basketball, focusing on everything. But look, at some point in the playoffs, you need to go to the well and rely on those who are going to be able to get you that win. I understand you have a system, understand that it's been incredibly successful for you throughout the regular season. But for Milwaukee, this is pretty much a make or break year in the sense of they need to show that they are better than what they have done so far as the playoffs are concerned. Now, in this series, that game one was a scare for them, and frankly, Miami's best chance to have stolen one from them. Took it all the way to overtime in a game where Milwaukee absolutely copped it, choked it, whatever you want to say as far as shooting is concerned. They were absolutely terrible. And they just got lucky that Miami was pretty much just as bad, and you got yourself into a situation where late in the game, Chris Middleton was able to get a good look for himself, set up that game winner, hit a nice shot, and he's kind of been their closer for a large period of time, has had a number of clutch buckets in playoff games in the past. But the biggest difference that you are seeing in the Milwaukee Bucks this year is 100% down to the difference that they made in their backcourt. And I mean that specifically 100%. In their point guard. You just talked about it in that Boston's game, the guy that they're missing, but Milwaukee has. Tell me what Drew Holiday has meant to the Milwaukee Bucks.
Honestly, if you even go back to game 1 and you talk about like that last quarter, Drew Holiday was like the initiator for pretty much everything. I saw him making freaking great passes down the stretch, getting people involved, but also like defensively, like he's done a fantastic job guarding some of their best. Like I know late in the game, Butler and I think Dragic were having some tough shots. Like I know Dragic's open 3 was like whatever, like it just happens sometimes. But Drew's just been fantastic as a guard, as a facilitator, and just giving the guys confidence down the stretch because they know they can rely on this guy to get a bucket. They can rely on this guy to hit free throws, which is another big thing. Like, guys, hit your free throws. Just you look at his body language, very calm, right? Very, very calm. And I think these intangibles are so important for a team that wants to make a big run because when, let's say Giannis gets nervous or Chris Middleton gets nervous because of the trauma that they've pretty much accumulated over the years of just not getting the job done, right? You have that guy that comes in as a completely new face and who knows how to hoop, who has the confidence and just gets those guys past that little mental hump. And I want to make some comparisons here. I'm not saying that, Danny Green or Kawhi are on the same, like, we're not talking the same levels as like, Drew Holiday, but that confidence, that kind of new perspective was enough to get them over that hump. In the East, LeBron leaving, everything made sense. And I think similarly over here, everything is making sense for the Milwaukee Bucks. So I actually think that this team could make a run for the finals this year with the addition of a guy like Drew Holiday. Of course, I still think Brooklyn will take it, but they can definitely make it a tough series because of how many options they have on Milwaukee to guard. Do you get what I mean?
No, I agree completely.
And this series, guess what? Miami's notorious zone defense, not working. They're doing a fantastic job exploiting that. And literally goes to show how important a guy like freaking Jay Crowder is to that team last year. But I don't know about you. I don't know what you were seeing with Drew Holiday in particular, but also the rest of the team and their confidence in this series.
Look, Drew to me was 100% the biggest improvement they could have made after the fact that they made, in my opinion, a huge mistake letting go of Malcolm Brogdon in the opportunity they had. Made no sense to me. Eric Bledsoe has never been a great player, plain and simple. But outside of that, it was one of those things where, look, Milwaukee already had issues in the half court, and frankly, they had issues containing people in scenarios in which they would then have to kind of fight back in transition. All of those places is where Drew Holiday is absolutely incredible. Not only is he just an absolutely insane defender, has been all-team defense 3 years, I believe, at this point in his career. Just absolutely awesome. But more so than that, that calmness that you spoke about. And it's also about making the right decisions under pressure. Look, in a game that went to overtime, was barely a one-possession game throughout. I think it had 13 lead changes throughout. Drew Holiday with a +10 was the best plus-minus guy on the Milwaukee Bucks. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that not only is it that the time he's coming in, he's going ahead and changing around how the game is running, because we know when Giannis is forced to kind of do everything on there, that is where he gets into trouble and where he has a little bit of actual difficulty dealing with all of that. And his free throw shooting is another aspect that Milwaukee is just kind of afraid of. The only reason this game went to overtime is because Giannis couldn't hit free throws to save his life.
Not just 13. That, but give credit to Jimmy Butler, man. That was a clutch basket. That's a tough basket because he jumped from far away.
Sure,
yeah, absolutely.
But he was 4 of 22 for that game, and for the vast majority of that time, the primary defender on him was Drew Holiday. So it's just been a great turnaround for them. And I've said this before. Drew Holiday has made this Milwaukee Bucks team completely ready for that playoff run. And seedings aside, apart from the fact that Brooklyn is this ridiculous monster that is going to require who knows what to be able to beat, this is the other best team in the Eastern Conference for me. So it's unfortunate in my mind that second round series is going to be them against the Brooklyn Nets. But it's just one of those things where, look, you have to go up against them eventually. You're going to have to try to beat them eventually.
Better early than later, right?
That second round series is going to probably be the series of the Eastern Conference when that happens. And I'm still sticking with it. This series is a sweep as well. Miami is completely overmatched. Milwaukee has figured them out. This second game, they finally got their shooting all together, led by Bryn Forbes, who has been just this absolute
fantastic,
lightning.
Man. Yeah, we talked about it early in the year too, like when we were doing report cards for each team, and we talked about them picking up, Drew Holiday, but we also talked about how, they picked up Forbes, and when he was on San Antonio, like he was also like probably one of their best 3-point shooters, and he looked like he can, change the game around. Look at that tough layup. So again, even the role players now, they're coming in and they're doing their job, especially in that second game. You tell me how you're going to contain it if the starters do what they're supposed to do and then the bench does what they're supposed to do. What do you do?
It's the same thing that Miami's had. Look, it comes down to the fact that they are hoping for much, much better from what they've been getting, especially from a player like Bam Adebayo, who has had a pretty disappointing series and frankly has struggled historically against the Milwaukee Bucks. Now, I don't know whether that's necessarily because Brook Lopez, who is, to me, one of the most underrated big men in the NBA, especially on the defensive end, he just has that capability to be able to bother you outside of spots that you otherwise would have done. But more so than that, Milwaukee has always had incredible help defense, and they just force you to go for tough looks every dang time. So as you can see over here, look, Bam is just absolutely crowded. This was a great finish, but this has been few and far between for someone like Bam, who's just been absolutely hounded as soon as he gets inside the paint. While on the other hand, Milwaukee has just been humming the ball. Look at this. Like, that's just back-end cuts that should be something that a player like Iguodala should be smart enough to know is happening, but they're getting caught up in all of the movement and all of the great off-ball screens that the Milwaukee Bucks are setting, and it's just throwing them off. We'll have to see if Miami can do something to try and extend this series once they go home now too, but yeah, it's not looking good. And if I'm to call it, Milwaukee would be kicking themselves if they give a single game to the Miami Heat with the level of talent that they have, and frankly, the level that they've shown they can play against a team that they are just far more talented than.
Of course. I mean, if you just take a look at some of the highlights that you see when they're not playing zone, Bam Adebayo has to stretch out to the 3-point line because of Brook Lopez. Lopez hardly is in the paint doing anything. So that just makes, the rest of the, Miami Heat defenders aren't as lengthy, big per se. It's a pretty small team if you think about it, because they lost guys like Kelly Olynyk. So what ends up happening now, it's a lot easier to penetrate. And so that's been happening. And honestly, who's going to stop Giannis? Then you have Chris Middleton, who's also a lengthy dude. Then you have Bobby Portis. Then you have Brook Lopez, if you want to take it in. And you talk about the defensive end, physicality. And as big as Bam Adebayo is and as smart of a player as he is, that doesn't mean that the beatdowns do not wear you out. You know what I mean? And if you're asked to play extended minutes, you're going to have trouble. You're definitely going to have trouble. And Trevor Ariza, he's way past what he was, and so who's going to guard these guys? Nobody. And that's pretty much the series wrapped right there in a nutshell. Harris, I don't know if you have anything else to say about this series in particular, but we can probably move on to the Lakers and Phoenix, which is actually more of an interesting series than any of these other two that we've been looking at.
Oh, I agree completely.
Playoff book's a thing, ladies and gentlemen. Playoff book is a thing. Talk about it.
Look, all these guys that have gone ahead and made their debuts this year, as far as the postseason is concerned, have been just absolutely scintillating. And I'm speaking specifically about the backcourt. We've seen what Trae Young has done in his playoff debut. Incredible game there. Ja Morant, who we're going to get to in our next episode once they have their second game tonight, has been absolutely incredible. And Devin Booker has absolutely stepped up all of the things that we had expected Devin Booker to be able to do. He's doing more so than Devin Booker, though. The other area in which Phoenix has been absolutely amazing, and the reason why they won game one, has been a guy that has missed a grand total of 3 field goals in the 2 games that they have played against the LA Lakers now. And that guy is DeAndre Ayton, that man in the middle, number 22, which is fitting because that's the points per game he's averaging so far in the series as well.
Oh, wow.
But he has just been absolutely amazing. And look, as much as you can say that, yes, he's doing it by getting inside and finishing out there, he's doing it because his footwork is just so incredibly well done, just so incredibly good that he is able to get around not only Anthony Davis, who has been obviously one of the best defenders at the 4 or 5 position for the time that he's been in the league, but just the way he's also able to read the help defender that's coming. It's just masterful to see. That being said, this moment, and I'll pause it here for a second, because this moment is probably what's going to end up defining what Phoenix does as far as the series is concerned, because they had an incredible game one, won that game in by and large convincing fashion, which was probably something the Lakers didn't expect to get a hit with a haymaker of that degree, of that caliber. But that shoulder injury of Chris Paul, a guy who has had his fair share of big moment playoff injuries, just so many things that you could say it's unfortunate, but if it keeps happening over and over, at some point you just got to see whether Chris Paul is the guy that you really want to hitch your wagon to when it gets to the postseason, because he just can't stay healthy no matter what ends up happening. He came back in this game. He couldn't shoot. Game 2 happens, as we'll see later on. He only played about 22 minutes in that game because he literally can't raise his right hand. He's pretty much there as a passer only, a complete zero on offense now. So what is that going to mean for the Phoenix Suns? I don't know, but it's not good.
No, definitely not good. I mean, I thought you were going to say the only one thing that he can do is now complain, which he does pretty well. So
I'm not going to kick a man when he's down. All right.
No. That's kind of unfair. But, it comes down to this. Like, don't forget that Chris Paul, Yeah, I want, as much as we want to say that he turned the team around completely, no, I disagree. I think early in the season, in the bubble last year, you saw Phoenix's run, and that was without Chris Paul by far and large. So they have all the tools here to defeat a team like the LA Lakers. Believe me, they do. Cameron Payne showed us yesterday his capabilities when, the chip is on his shoulder. Like, he outplayed all of the guards on LA, quite honestly. And it was a neck and neck game for a lot of it. And that's without Chris Paul, right? What you got to give credit to the Lakers is their defense was sublime yesterday when it mattered. And with them, it's like they may not play really, really well throughout the game, but in the fourth quarter, they just turn it up. Like LeBron takes over or AD takes over, and that becomes the difference. Now, Ayton outplayed and outclassed, AD in the first game, but that didn't mean that in the second game, AD would make the adjustments. And I think AD was the biggest difference maker entirely in that game. And he was the superstar that I will say pretty much stood out. Like oh God, Drummond. Why do we have to see him? But anyway, like, it comes down to, the matchups. The matchups I personally feel are still pretty good and pretty balanced in terms of the teams. Like, Ayton may not be as good as AD, but he can definitely, as you can see, play effective enough to make it close. And D-Book is a wild card. If he takes over and he gets hot in the right stretches, man, if the games remain close, chances are like D-Book can take over and win them some games. Now, Chris Paul not being there, that shoulder injury looks bad, of course, if he's not able to play, but it's been a few days of rest now. So hopefully through some rehab and rest, maybe he has the opportunity. And I'm sure they put cortisone shots in there somewhere. So maybe, just maybe, we might get a little bit of Chris Paul. So if he plays, let's say 5 to 10 more minutes than he did before, and in the important stretches, maybe, just maybe, Phoenix might be able to pull a few. Do I think they win the series? Probably not. But can they make it a series? Absolutely. With the given roster? Absolutely. So, game 3 is, I believe, tomorrow. And that should be a fun one in itself, because I believe it's in LA this time. Or is it game? Yeah. So, and of course, you have a guy like Jay Crowder, who's always there to piss people off, which is amazing. It is what it is. I don't know about you.
It was a big shot by
Chris
Paul.
Huge shot. That was a huge.
If he can at least get some of those timely buckets, maybe they can find a way to steal one in LA. I'm not super convinced, just with how it's kind of gone. LA has had this thing. They even had it last year where they gave up a lot of game ones. They lost the game 1 against Portland. They lost the game 1 against Houston. They lost one game against Denver as well. And in each of those ones, they were able to just go ahead and readjust and come back. And much as you said, Anthony Davis had a terrible game 1, like absolutely historically bad by his standards, just a disgusting game. And he took it upon himself to be better in game 2. And he was by huge stretches. I mean, it's not like you could go that much worse, but he had a great game in game 2. And that is exactly what you expect from a guy who is a bona fide superstar. So these kind of things are going to be those little battles as you go through. As we said, DeAndre Ayton has been awesome. 22 points a game, shooting nearly 90% from the field. All of that stuff is eventually going to regress to the mean. What happens when that does? Where is it that you can continue to find ways to really stretch the LA Lakers defensively? Because this last game, what the Lakers did is that Dennis Schroeder was able to kind of get all of those extra looks, because LeBron wasn't actually looking for his offense all that much this game. He was happy to be in a facilitator role, getting AD more involved, but it was Dennis Schroeder who was doing a lot of this, facilitating a lot of the offense. And as much as I dislike Andre Drummond, he actually played very solidly in the second game, a very good double-double. And he actually, apart from his time with DeAndre Ayton, which obviously wasn't going well, did a lot of good things underneath the basket that helped create a number of second chance opportunities for the LA Lakers to help put this game away, which, as you said, was a lot closer than than the final box score would otherwise indicate. So it really will come down to what the Phoenix Suns can kind of bring as far as their offensive consistency comes with Chris Paul's injury, how that's going to look. But I could definitely see them taking one of these games. I still see it as a 6-game series with the LA Lakers coming out on top. But as we've seen in some of these other playoff games, you just never know when someone offensively dominant gets going. And sometimes that can just be enough to change everything and absolutely go out of this world, which is what we're going to talk about when we get into now our next series. If there's anything else you want to say about this one before we get into something a little magical that seems to be going
yeah, we'll get into that. But just really quickly, I think another big difference maker for this series, in particular for Phoenix, I saw some great things from Cam Johnson, and I think defensively and offensively, I think his confidence is there. Play him a little bit more and see what happens. That's a quick hot take.
Play more Cam Johnson. That hairdo is getting him that aerodynamic capabilities that he needs to be able to get.
Exactly. So
he's a good shooter. He's always been a good shooter.
He's been a great shooter.
That's how it works.
But yeah, that's it from this series. Let's move on to the next one. Now we're talking more magical and something that actually might be almost memeable at this point, with the Dallas Mavericks and the LA Clippers. How is it, Haris, that the LA Clippers are down 2-0 to Luka Doncic, Luka Magic? Explain this. I don't understand it. I don't know why it's happening. I have some sort of idea, but it shouldn't be happening is what I'm trying to say.
Look, first and foremost, let's just straight out put this there. The LA Clippers defensively have been a joke. No Absolutely. 2 ways to be able to put it. An absolute joke. Less so in this game 1, but that game 2 yesterday was probably the worst defensive performance I have ever seen of a playoff team that's supposed to be making a run. Let's throw these numbers out there for you, all right? In game 2, which the Mavericks ended up winning 127-121, probably shouldn't have even been that close. They shot 58% from the field, 52% from 3, and the only reason this game wasn't a complete and utter joke all the way through is because they decided to shoot 13 of 24 from the free throw line. It was just absolutely hilarious how it was going. For the vast majority of the game, they were better from 3 than they were from the free throw line. But pretty much what the LA Clippers were doing time and time again was having Kawhi on as a primary defender to Luka Doncic, and then just the easiest of switches. No matter what, Dallas could easily go up with either Tim Hardaway Jr., Finney Smith, or even sometimes Jalen Brunson, depending on how it is. And that's it. Easy switch, and now Patrick Beverley would be on him. And that matchup has been absolutely abused by Luka Doncic throughout these 2 games thus far. And frankly, I don't see too much changing until the Clippers themselves pretty much pick up their big boy britches and decide to actually be some sort of a defensive team that they're supposed to be. You have 2 of the best wing defenders in the league on the squad. You have had a top 10 defensive season. What in the hell is going on? At home, 2 games, absolutely outclassed. It is just disgusting.
It's just the weak side defense, the switches. You absolutely hit the nail on the head. But also, I feel like you're talking about. There's been moments where Kawhi's been defending Luka, and that's how exactly it should be. I don't think, and it honestly should be man to man. There is no reason for them to have switches with Kawhi on Luka. Okay. And the reason why I say that is because immediately with Kawhi defending anyone, it's going to make it difficult. Okay. You get rid of Luka in this game, there's not much the rest of the team can do. Personally, that's how I feel. Although, yes, Porzingis shot well yesterday, and the rest of the team, Hardaway.
Let's talk about Hardaway. He's been absolutely.
Timmy was going off. But again, it comes down to he was open half the time. There was some plays down the stretch where I was like, what the hell is this defense thinking? They didn't even rotate to the guy wide open. And that happened like 2-3 times in a row. And I'm like, what the hell is this? It's disgusting. And it comes down to this. For some reason, when Luka has the ball, instead of just going man to man with, you have Paul George, dude. Like, that's also a guy who knows how to defend, even though unfortunately he has been on the wrong side of history when it comes to defending. He's still a good defender. Luka can be defended by Paul or Kawhi. Put one of them on there and don't try to trap him. Trapping has not worked at all because then you leave half of their men open. Their trapping has been garbage and rotations have been garbage. And that's why they're losing. And then you look at a guy like, I think we were having a discussion in some of the other groups. One of the things we said is like, why isn't Ibaka playing more? That in itself is really questionable because, I mean, Zubac is just way too slow. I'm sorry. For this matchup, he's way too slow, and I don't think he's doing what they need him to be doing. Yeah, sure, he can set some good screens and this and that and rebounds. Sure, he has the capacity to rebound, but so does Ibaka, man. Like, I think in this form of the game, I personally feel like Zubac should be playing less minutes than Ibaka. Just give it a try. Even though Ibaka is like a little undersized as a big, like he has that championship experience and he is absolutely someone who can change a game just based off of his energy. Zubac has just been quiet. You know what I mean? Batum's been playing terrible in my opinion too. You know what I mean? So like just something of a suggestion. I think Tyronn Lue is the reason why they're losing. I wouldn't want to singly put it out on any one player or like the team in itself. I just think coaching is so god awful that it's costing them the series. Do I think that they come back with a bang because now they have to take the? Of course, they were going to take it seriously anyway, but a little bit more serious. Like they're on survival mode at this point. We're going to see that. But the best part about all this is to see Doncic talking shit to Beverly. I think that's the beautiful thing because Bev has nothing to say, like literally nothing to say, and it's kind of sad. You know why it's sad is because as much as we like to make fun of playoff Paul. And in itself, he's been having a fantastic series. I don't care what anybody says. He's been playing great. Yes, he has. He's been playing great.
I will disagree on that one, sir.
Okay, why do you disagree?
Apart from the fact that his percentages have just been bad, the only time that he has gotten anything going is when the Mavericks have literally opened the lane for him to go in and get a dunk. His three-point shooting has been god-awful. His absolute decision-making on how he's shooting has been awful. And we've already talked about how defensively he just hasn't been playing up to mark. In fact, he hasn't, plain and simple, been involved in the defensive possessions vast majority of this game. If you look at it, he is constantly taking on like a Maxi Kleba assignment, or sometimes he'll go into like Finney Smith. These are not guys who are going to be major offensive cogs on this Dallas Mavericks team. And it's like Paul George is kind of aside. If there's a switch that should be happening, that's the only switch that should be allowed, where Paul George is the one switching with Kawhi to be able to go and deal with that. So if you see that, go and make that push, force that switch to happen.
But tell me who's the one who's telling
that's an effort. The coach is supposed to be telling you these things. You should have some pride in how
that's what I'm saying. But that's what it comes down to, right? Like it's important as a player to be like, okay, well, something's not working right now and we need to really change it. And it should be up to like superstars like Kawhi, Paul George to speak up and do something about it, right? And I agree with you 100%. Like Paul George needs to take on these assignments and not like get, I don't want to say the words that I was going to say, get scared of a matchup like that. I don't know what it is. Maybe he's conserving his energy on the offensive end just because they have so many defensive-minded players to go do these assignments. It's not been working. It really hasn't. And honestly, if you play on both ends of the court, maybe that makes your decision-making, quote-unquote, that you feel like hasn't been there, a little bit better, okay? But honestly, like even if his shot selection hasn't been the greatest, I still think he's been playing very well. Even if he's not been scoring his threes, I still think he's been playing very, very well on the offensive end. So I don't want you to discredit that. And just notice, I hope he will play a lot more of a defensive game next game as well. And, you don't want guys like Timmy Hardaway doing things like that simply. You know what I mean? It's just tragic to see. Like
Hardaway has straight up outplayed Paul George in the first two games of this series.
100%. I love it. Don't get me wrong. I love it. But it's like, you come into this season with this like chip on your shoulder, considering it like a revenge season. I haven't seen the revenge attitude yet, is what I'm saying. You
The
have been
revenge
playing.
is from the Mavericks, who had a 6-game series against them last year, which frankly, I said at that time, if Porzingis was there and the
Was
way that
healthy,
series
they
was gone,
could have
they
arguably
could have
won.
won that
Yeah.
series.
Yeah.
And now we're seeing it. And Porzingis isn't even having the greatest of
impact like
impact
that.
on there. He's playing all right. But it's been more of the Tim Hardaway Jr., the Dorian Finney-Smith, the Jalen Brunson. These guys have been absolutely on lock for them. And it's just been amazing to see. That's where the confidence comes from. Those Clippers backups, that Clippers depth is lost here. And the Ibaka situation, I mean, some of it, Ty Lue spoke about being strategic, about going small, but more so than that, remember, he missed 2 months of this season with a back injury that he just got back to about 5 games before the season ended. And I feel like it's pretty clear that it is still limiting him now, but they're just not talking about it. They're just kind of trying to get past this, hope that he's able to get himself healthy as well. Because even though Ibaka hasn't been that same defensive presence for a couple of years now, more so than that, it's just the confidence and hype that he brings alongside his ability to make tough shots in tough situations that the LA Clippers are really, really missing, because they're essentially being forced to play guys like Reggie Jackson for 30 minutes. Why did he play 30 minutes last game? Why did Rondo only play 18? I don't understand.
For real, tell me about that. Talk about
things
this.
that don't make sense to me.
What did you bring Rondo in for, man? There's a playoff Rondo thing, and it's not being used. And don't get me wrong. Like, Jackson had a great game yesterday. Don't even take that away from him. He was hitting 3 after 3 after 3. It's just that defense has just let them down so hard, and it's unfortunate that they're down 2-0. Do I think it's a sweep? No. Do I think they still have a chance to win this game or like this series? Of course they do. Given their talent, of course they do. But it's just embarrassing right now to see them down 2-0. But who knows? Maybe this was like the kick in the butt that they needed in order for them to wake up. You know what I mean? So expect a much different LA Clippers team, a much different Paul George, a much more intense version of the Clippers next game. And if they don't end up winning, the series a wrap, honestly. And all you Clippers fans, all of you NBA fans that said, oh, Kawhi is the reason why the Raptors won the championship, blah, 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 the bullshit, the narrative about, the Raptors this, Raptors that. No. Now you can see he's been given everything that he needs on paper, and quite frankly, the job's just not done. And you can talk about the Raptors. The coaching was fantastic, A+ to that. The floor general, Kyle Lowry, was a huge reason to his success. And the rest of the role players, they did their thing. And that's what it takes for a championship team to be built. And unfortunately here, they're lacking a little bit of that floor general situation, which they picked up Rondo and they're not using. But also the coaching is horrible. I'm going to say it straight up. Lue is not a good coach. He's not a good coach. He was carried by LeBron his entire career. And so this is just harsh. He doesn't have LeBron anymore. Tell me, what's he have then? He's got nothing. So I think Coach Rondo should be in. He's got a claw, but does a claw really do anything? No, let's be honest. He just goes to strip clubs, grabs other things, and plays his game, drops his 40, moves on to the next one.
Come on, man. Now, Kawhi's been awesome so far in this series. Yes. And look, this entire thing has been exactly what we spoke about, that support coming through. Luka and Kawhi have pretty much had identical series as far as their number of production is concerned. Frankly, their impact. But it's all come down to what the rest of the guys are doing. Tim Hardaway, Porzingis, these guys have stepped up immensely, especially Tim Hardaway, which has been, as I said, that extra wrinkle that really changes around that Dallas offense, because he's one of those guys that, there's a heat check guy that every team has.
Yeah, definitely.
Tim Hardaway is the ultimate heat check.
Yeah, streaky as hell. But his shot form is beautiful, Harsh. You should take one from his book. One of the best shot forms, in my opinion, in the NBA. But yeah, man, look at this finish that he had over here, man. Like, it's so easy. It's so easy. In transition, they're doing it. While they're sitting around, they're doing it. They're drinking their Gatorade and scoring with their left hand. Like, you know what I mean? It's just embarrassing.
Yeah, like there's no interior presence. They try with Zubac, who's not mobile enough. Then they have small ball with Batum moving up to the center. And then that's it. They love Zubats out there because they'll make a switch, get Doncic to go on him, and then it's done. It's money. He'll either step back over him or he'll just blow past him. It's just one of those things where even though the Clippers kept themselves alive with a bit of good shooting down the stretch, this was never really a game they had any
free
real
throws.
shot of winning.
It was just the free throws that they were missing like crazy. Look at that. They switch on to Kawhi, and then the first thing Luka does is fade away in his face, rainbow. Good night.
Really? I mean, if you're just going to hit those kind of shots, you can live with it, right? But it's the rest that's just been so incredibly disappointing.
Yeah. Anyway, that is it about the Clippers. I don't know about what you guys think, fans. Let us know what you think about this series. Do you think it was a surprise that Dallas is up 2-0? Do you think that the Clippers can come back from a series like this so far? Let us know in the comments and talk about the rest of those. We also had one more series. Unfortunately, we didn't get the videos for it, but it's the Portland series. And that is also something that I think you probably felt like was a surprise for them to go up early. And then that last game, what can you say about Denver? It's a fantastic team. They came back, baby. Fantastic. So
look, there's no doubt that Portland is an offensively talented team that is always going to have the capability to be able to put up big buckets quickly. And if you don't kind of keep that in check, you can find yourself going home. But the fact of the matter is, in the end and over a playoff series, the weaknesses get magnified to such an extent that oftentimes that becomes your Achilles heel. That becomes the reason why you can't make it past that hump. And the fact of the matter is that even though the Denver Nuggets are short-handed, obviously they don't have Jamal Murray, who, by the way, is probably put up the meme of the playoffs with that hat of his and his face on the referee's decision-making. But what the Denver Nuggets have is depth, and what the Portland Trailblazers lack is defensive capability. Remember, this is like Jekyll and Hyde, ultimate Jekyll and Hyde, number 2 ranked offensive team in the league, number 29 defense. And that is one of those things where, man, especially once it gets down into the depths of the playoffs, when it gets difficult, Dame is Dame. He has been awesome. He's going to keep hitting those tough buckets. But it comes down to, it's a numbers game in the end. It's a matter of doing the right things over and over again. And the fact of the matter is, if you watch throughout the game between the Denver Nuggets and the Portland Trailblazers, it is clear which team is able to generate the superior offense, which team is able to get easier buckets because of the fact that they just have no presence to be able to stop them. And even though on paper, this should be a much better defensive team. I mean, think about it. You've got Robert Covington, you've got Yusuf Nurkic. That's an elite wing defender. Norman Powell, like these are great wing defenders, and in Nurkic, an elite rim stopper. And these are guys that have had great defensive years, but the problem is it just doesn't mesh together because you've got guys who are just absolutely defensive sieves on the other end. I mean, as much as Dame and CJ are incredible offensive players, especially in the case of CJ, they are bad defensively. Like laterally, they aren't able to stay in front of their man, and they've often just been lazy in their defensive rotations, and that's allowed a lot of what Denver is looking to do to just get you going. And remember, the wrinkle in how Denver works is that most of their offense isn't coming from the guards, but
it's coming from their big.
It's coming from their big, but their guards have sick shot creation ability. Monte Morris, who I have said for a long time is a thoroughly underrated backup guard, just has so much in his bag. If you look back in this game, he had at least 2 ankle breakers and a couple of just nasty buckets to be able to go ahead and put it up. But as much as Portland, riding on the high of a big Melo game, won that first game, I'm seeing the second game as more of an indicator of what we'll start to see as the series keeps rolling on. And I know people have picked Portland to come out of this series. I've still got Denver taking it in either 6 or 7 games. I'm actually going to say 6, but that's pretty much how it's going to end up going because of the fact that there's just more that Denver has, not only in experience, because not only have they had a Western Conference final run to go back from last year, but their vets are well rested going into this because they have actually spent a lot of time relying on their young dudes to be able to go and work with Jokic. But now Paul Millsap, for instance, who's been taking a nice chill seat up until the playoffs have come. But now once the playoffs turn around, he turned back into Atlanta Sapper, and he had a number of just massive plays in the game. A couple of sick and ones, a couple of great defensive stops, and just in general looks rejuvenated and ready for that playoff run, just like those vets are. And I just think that level of depth and experience is going to be too much for a Portland Trailblazers team that has too many holes in their game to be able to overcome.
Yeah, man. Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, you're right. I really want Portland to make it through just because they are like one of my favorite teams to watch. But Denver also, we talked about it. We love that team and the way it's made up and the way that they kind of facilitate the ball and how deep they are. So, in any case, it's a great series to watch. If you guys want to see two different types of teams going at it, look no further. Yep. You have a 3 and highlight reel flashy team with solid shot creation. And then you have another team that's just an elite facilitating team. Find the right man. Campazzo also, give credit to that guy too, right?
Ooh, he's awesome. I love that dude.
Someone told me, kind of made a really, really great, I think, comparison. And they just said he's the Jose Calderon of this team, right? Amazing offensively, defensively, a little bit all over the place. But, give him credit. He's done some decent work.
He stays up in the ice. Yeah, he's a
little guy. Yeah, a little hamster just going in at the rest of
Campazzo, if you're listening to this, we did not call you a hamster. I love you, right?
We love that. But yeah, man, and then let's finally end it off with today's series. We don't really want to get too in deep with it because it's already, we're pretty much in game time with the Philly and the Philly series. And I'm more excited about the Atlanta and New York game, to be honest, because this should be a sweep with the Philadelphia 76ers. But we're excited. I don't know what you think. Does Philly take today?
Yeah, look, we wanted to focus on the games that have been done to be able to see how teams react. Absolutely, on paper, the Philadelphia 76ers should be looking to go ahead and take it, and that's why series like these 4 or 5 ones are always ones that people look forward to. Atlanta had an incredible game 1, stole a game in New York, got so much that the New York mayor had to come out and start dropping some shade on Trae Young on his hunting for foul. But that's cold. Come on, man. He just iced
you. You see what he said after? Oh, man, he was talking to the crowd. He let Spike Lee know what was up. That was really funny. But, I really want New York to do well. I think the crazy thing was, it was on the back of, a guy like Alec Burks that kind of turned the game around for them and kept them in there. And then it was exactly the same guy that fed Atlanta the win, right? And that's just the tragedy of that game. So, hopefully today, I know the first quarter kind of finished and they're down 7 right now. New York is down 27-20. But it should be a great game. You never know what to expect. But yeah, with that being said,
we're going to focus on more of these series as we get further and further in. All right, start to see the comebacks here. So obviously Memphis and Utah is a game I'll be watching very closely tonight. Utah needs to make that comeback. They're my finals pick, so they can't just screw around me on it like that. But Donovan Mitchell is back tonight, so that's going to be big for them. I totally expect a solid comeback effort by the Utah Jazz to really stamp their authority in a series where, a banana slip game happens. It's all right. It's all about how you go ahead and fight back from it. That was a banana slip. You can't lose like that kind of a game to the Memphis Grizzlies. It was them playing badly. I'm gonna hold off on saying all that stuff until we see how this game 2 happens. But
for sure,
let's go ahead and see that tonight. But as always, thanks very much for joining us. As I said, we'll keep going on this live. Follow us at The Swing Podcast on Instagram, where we're going to go live with our reactions post-game as well. And as always, Tuesdays, Fridays. Today we did it on Wednesday just to be able to focus on it. But as always, The Swing Podcast is live on SportsTrends with that guy Owais, Zuko, and HK as we go ahead and break down the rest of what we're seeing in the NBA world. So until then, we will see you on the next one. Stay safe and be ready for the rest of these playoffs.
Bye, guys.